from Las Vegas, it's theCUBE. Covering Qualys Security Conference 2019. Brought to you by Qualys.
Hey, welcome back everybody. Jeff Frick here with theCUBE. We're in Las Vegas at the Bellagio at the Qualys Security Conference. It's the 19th year they've been doing this. It's our first year here and we're excited to be here. And it's great to have a veteran who's been in this space for so long to give a little bit more of a historical perspective as to what happened in the past and where we are now and what can we look forward to in the future. So coming right off his keynote is Philippe Courtot, the chairman and CEO of Qualys. Philip, great to see you.
Thank you, same for me.
Absolutely, so you touched on so many great topics in your conversation about kind of the shifts of modern computing from the mainframe to the mini. We've heard it over and over and over, but the key message was really about architecture.
Correct.
If you don't have the right architecture, you can't have the right solution.
Of course.
So how has the evolution of architectures impacted your ability to deliver security solutions for your clients?
So now that's a very good question, and in fact, what happened is that we started in 1999 with a vision that we could use exactly like Salesforce.com, these nascent internet technologies, and apply that to security. And Mark Benioff applied that to essentially changing the way CRM was essentially used and deployed in enterprises, and with a fantastic success, as we know. So for us, I can say today that 19 years later, the vision was right. It took us significantly longer because the security people were not really warm at the idea of suddenly having the data in their view, which was in place that they could not control. And the IT people, they didn't really like at all the fact that suddenly they were not in control anymore of the infrastructure. So we had a lot of resistance. However, I always absolutely believe that the cloud will be the cloud architecture. To go back, a lot of people make the confusion, and that was part of the confusion, that for people it was a cloud, that kind of magical thing, someplace you don't know where. And when I was trying to explain, and I've been saying that so many times, that you need to look at the cloud like an architecture which distribute the computing power far more efficiently than the previous one, which was client server, which was distributing the computing power far better than, of course, the mainframes and the mini computers. And so if you look at their architectures, so the mainframe were essentially big data centers in Fort Knox-like settings, private lines of communication to a DAM terminal. And of course, security was not really an issue then, because its security was built in by the IBMs and company. Same thing with the mini computer, which then was, instead of just providing that computing power to the very large company who could afford it, now suddenly the mini computer, through the advance in semiconductor technology, could reduce the footprint and then now bring that computing power to the labs and to the departments. And that was then the new era of the digital equipment, the prime, the data general, etc. And then client server came in. So what client server did, again, if you look at the architecture, different architecture. Now suddenly servers, the LAN, or the internal network, and the PC. And that was now allowing to distribute the computing power to the people in the company. And so, but then you needed to, nobody paid attention to security, because then you were inside of the enterprise, so inside the walls of the castle, if you prefer. So nobody paid attention to that, and it was more complex because now you have multiple actors. Instead of having one IBM or one digital equipment, etc., suddenly you have the people manufacturing the servers, the software, the database, the PCs, and on and on. So suddenly the complexity increased significantly. But nobody paid attention to security because it was not needed, until suddenly we realized that viruses could come in through the front door, being installed, and now suddenly you were absolutely compromised. And of course, that's the era of the antivirus, which came in. And then, because of the need to communicate more and more, now suddenly you could not stay only in your castle, you need to go and communicate to your customers, to your suppliers, etc., etc. And now you were starting to open up your castle to the world. And hello, so now suddenly the bad guy could come in and start to steal your information. And that was the new era of the firewall. Now you make sure that those who come in, but of course that was a little bit naive because there were so many other doors and windows that people could come in, create tunnels and create this and all of that to enter into your castle, because the data was becoming more and more rich and more important, so more value. So whenever there's value, of course, the bad guys are coming in to try to steal it. And that was that new era of, hey, we need to pay attention to security. The problem has been is because you have so many different actors, there was nothing really central there. Now you suddenly had more and more solutions, and now absolutely like 800 vendors bolting on security.
Right.
And bolting on anything is short-lived at the end of the day, because you put more and more weight. And then you also increase the complexity, and all these different solutions, they need to talk together. So you have a better context. But they were not designed to talk together. So now you need to put other system where they could communicate that information. So you complicate and complicate and complicate the solution. And that's the problem of today. So now cloud computing comes in. And again, if you look at the architecture of cloud computing, it's again data centers, which now today have become, thanks to the technology, having infinite almost computing power and storage capabilities. And like the previous data center, they are much more fractal because you just want scale, and they become essentially a little bit easier to secure. And by the way, you have fewer vendors now doing that. And then, of course, the access can be controlled better. And then, of course, the second component is not the LAN and the WAN, it's now the internet. And the internet, of course, is the way of communication. It's extremely cheap, and it brings you in every place on the planet, and soon in Mars. Why not? So now the issue today is that still the internet needs to be secure. And today, how are you going to secure the internet? Which is a very important thing today. Because you see today that you can spoof your email, you can spoof your website, you could attack the DNS, spoof the DNS. There's a lot of things that the bad guys still do. And in fact, themselves, they leverage the internet, of course, to access everywhere. So they take advantage of it. So now, this is obviously, I created the trustworthy movement many years ago to try to really address that. Unfortunately, Qualys was too small, and it was not really our place. Today, there's all the Google, the Facebook, the big guys, which in fact, their business depends on the internet, now need to do that. And I applaud, albeit they've been criticized very much. So Google was the first one to essentially have a big initiative, was trying to push SSL, which everybody understands, is secure encryption, if you prefer, and to everybody. So they did a fantastic job. They really push it. So now today SSL is becoming like, okay, SSL, you want to have SSL on your communication, but that's not enough. And now they are pushing, and some people criticize them, and I absolutely applaud them, to say we need to change the internet protocols, which were created at a time when security, you were transferring information from universities and so forth. These were the heydays, of everything was fine, there's no bad guys, the hippie days, if you like, of the internet. Everybody was free, everybody was open, fantastic, okay? And now, of course, today this protocol needs to be upgraded, which is a lot of work. But today, I really believe that if you put Google, Amazon, Facebook all together, and they can fix these internet protocols, so we could forget about the spoofing, and we forget about all this phishing and all these things. But this is their responsibility. So, and then you have now on the other side, you have now very intelligent devices, from very simple sensors, and to sophisticated devices, the phone, etc., and more and more devices interconnected. And for people to understand what is going, so this is the new environment. And what we always believe is that if you adopt an architecture which fits, which is similar, then we could, instead of bolting security in, we can now suddenly build security in, bolting security on, we could build security in. And we have been very proud of the work that we have done with Microsoft, which we announced, in fact, relatively recently, very recently, that in fact our agent technologies now is bundled in Microsoft. So we have built security with Microsoft in. So from a security perspective today, if you go to the Microsoft Azure Security Center, you click on a link, and now you have the view of your entire Azure environment, courtesy of a Qualys agent. You click on a second link, and now you have the view of your security compliance posture, courtesy of that same Qualys agent. And then you click on the third link, which has nothing to do with Qualys, it's all Microsoft. You create your playbook and you remediate. So security in this environment has become click, 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 nothing to install, nothing to update, and the only thing you bring are your policies, saying, I don't want to have this kind of machine exposed on the internet, I want this is what I want. And you can continuously audit essentially in real time.
Right.
So as you can see, totally different than putting boxes and boxes and so many things and then having to, for you to, so very big game changer. So the analogy that I give to people, it's so people understand that paradigm shift. It's already happening in the way we secure our homes. You put sensors everywhere, you have cameras, you have detection, proximity detection. Essentially, when somebody tries to enter your home, all that data is continuously pumped up into an incident response system. And then from your phone, again, across the internet, you can change the temperature of your rooms, you can see the person who knocks on the door, you can see its face, you can open the door, close the door, the garage door, you can do all of that remotely and automatically. And then if there's a burglar, then in your house to try to break in, immediately the incident response system call the cops or the fire marshal if you got fire. And that's the new paradigm. So security has to follow that paradigm. And then you have, interesting enough, the problem today that we see with all the current security systems, incident response system, they have a lot of false positive. False positive and false negative are the enemy, really, of security, because if you have false positive, you cannot automate the response, because then you are going to try to respond to something that is not true. So you could create a lot of damage. And the example I give you that today, if you leave your dog in your house, and if you don't have the ability, the dog will bark, will move, and then the sensors will say intruder alert. So that becomes a false positive. So how do you eliminate that? By having more context, you can eliminate automatically, again, these false positives. Like now you take a fingerprint of your dog and of its voice, and now the camera and the sensors and the voice can pick up and say, oh, this is my dog. So then, of course, you eliminate that false alert.
Right, right.
Now, if another dog managed to enter your home through a window which was open or whatever, first of all, you will know a window was open, but you cannot necessarily fix it, and the dog opens, then you will know it's not your dog.
Right.
So that's what security is evolving. So it's a huge sea of change which is happening because of all that internet. And today, companies today have to leverage this new cloud technology, which are coming. There's so much new technology. What people don't understand is, where's that technology coming from? How come suddenly we have Dockers, Kubernetes, all these solutions today which are available at almost no cost because it's all open source. So what happened is that, which is unlike the enterprise software, which were more the Oracle, etc., the manufacturer of that software, today it's in fact the public cloud vendors, the Amazon, the Google, the Facebook, the Microsoft, which suddenly needed to develop new technology so they could scale at the size of the planet. And then very shrewdly realized that if I keep that technology for me, I'm essentially going to imprison that technology. It's not going to evolve. And then I need other technologies that I'm not developing. So they realized that they totally changed that open source movement, which in the early days of open source was more controlled by people who had more purity, if you prefer, no commercial interest. It was all for the good of the civilization and humankind. And they say their licensing model was very complex, so they simplified all of that. And then now suddenly you had all this technology coming at you extremely fast. And we have leveraged that technology, which was not existing in the early days when Salesforce.com started. We had the Linux, the LAMP protocol, what's called.
Right,
Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. A little bit limiting, but now suddenly all this technology like Elasticsearch, was coming. We index today in our backend 3 trillion data points on our Elasticsearch clusters, and we return information in 100 milliseconds. And then on the Kafka bus, which is again something at open source, we vehicle now today 5 million messages a day, and on and on and on. So the world is changing, and of course, if that's what is called now the digital transformation. So now enterprises, to be essentially agile, to reach out to their customers better and more, they need to embrace the cloud as well.
Right.
Retool their entire IT infrastructure. And essentially it's a huge sea of change. And that's what we see. Even the market of security, just to finish, now evolving in a totally different ways than the way it has been, which in the past the market of security was essentially the market for the enterprise. And I'm bringing you my bolt-on solutions that you have to go and install and make work.
Right.
And then you had the antivirus essentially for all the consumers and so forth. So today what we see is a marketplace which is fragmenting in 4 different segments, which is one is the large enterprise, which are going to essentially consolidate their stack, move into the digital transformation, leveraging absolutely DevOps, which is becoming the new buyer, and of course, so they could improve, their IT to reach out to more customers and more effectively. Then the cloud providers, as I mentioned earlier, which are building security in. So now if you use them, you don't have to worry about infrastructure, about how many servers you need, how many it is, it's all done for you, and same thing about security.
Right.
The third market is going to be an emergence of a new generation of managed security service providers, which are going to take to all these companies who don't have enough resources, okay, don't worry, I'm going to help you, do all that digital transformation and help you build the security. And then there's a totally new market of all these devices, including the phone, etc., which connects, and that you essentially want to, all these like OT and IoT devices that are all now connected, which of course present security risk. So you need to also secure them, but you also need to be able to also not only check their health, to make sure that, okay, because you cannot send people anymore, so you need to automate. Same thing on security. If you find that that phone is compromised, you need to be able to make immediate decisions about, should I kill that phone?
Right.
Destroy everything in it? Should I now don't let that phone connect anymore to my network? What should I do? Should I, by the way, I detected that they've downloaded applications which are not allowed, because what we see is more and more companies now are giving tablets to their users, and in doing so now today's the company property, so they could say, okay, you use these tablets and you're not allowed to do this. So you could check all of that and then automatically remote. But that again requires a full visibility on what you have, and that's why, just to finish, we make a big decision about 3 months ago that we build the ability for any company on the planet to automatically build their entire global IT asset inventory, which nobody knows what they have in that old networking environment. You don't know what connects. To have the view of the known and the unknown, totally free of charge, across on-premise, endpoint, cloud, containers, web applications, OT and IoT devices to come. So now that's the cornerstone of security. So with that, totally free. So, and then of course we have all these additional solutions, and we have built a very scalable open platform where we can take data in, pass our data as well. So we really need to be and want to be good citizens here, because security at the end of the day, it's almost like we used to say, like the doctors, you have to have that kind of Hippocrates oath,
right,
that you cannot do no harm. So if you try to take the data that you have, keep it with you, that's absolutely